Hello, I'm John Kuhn. I'm a faculty member at the University of South Florida in chemical and biomedical engineering. My lab focuses primarily on waste to energy and reusing materials and resources that we very often discard and try to converting them to usable fuels and chemicals. My Hinkley Center projects have focused on a variety of waste to energy aspects. We have looked at biogas conversion, solid waste conversion. Every person in the U.S. discards about 4 pounds or 5 pounds of trash per day. About 1/3 of that is food waste or things that could decompose in landfills, and we look at directly and indirectly converting that to usable products. Waste to energy is a very important area because for many everyday products, including plastics and fuels, we are generally getting all this from petroleum, so fossil fuels, whereas in the U.S. alone, we have about 300 million tons of waste being processed every day. It's about 5 pounds per person. And in doing that, about 1/3 of that is food waste or things that can be decomposed. And that we can use those as feedstocks to replace some of these fuels or chemicals that we use on an everyday basis without having to resort to fossil fuels. I've been really influenced in this area and energy from a lot of my own background and coming up to this. Coming to the University of South Florida, we had a number of people in this area, including Professors Babu Joseph, Venkat Bethanabhatla, and John Wall, I worked very closely with them in the first couple of years I was here to kind of translate some of my background into these solving these everyday problems. So I was influenced by them as well as some of my faculty members at schools I went to prior to coming to the University of South Florida. So one of the great things about our Hinkley Center projects is that through the Hinkley Center and the Florida DEP, we get tangible problems that students can really take an interest to, and they can see how this translates relatively quickly compared to a lot of other research into solutions that people can use. Another great thing about these is we have industry people coming a few times a year to talk to the students about what the real problems are in the waste energy market or in the solid waste industry, and the students get kind of a direct impact that's not going through reading things or seeing people. They're actually talking to them and are able to get input on how this impacts the research they're doing today. So one of the most exciting things that my lab has done at USF is particularly coming from one of our first Hinkley grants. This has been funded then from the Department of Energy for a couple of different grants since then, but we have taken landfill gas, so stuff that's being flared or used for electricity very commonly, and we're converting this to diesel fuel. And we have done this at the lab scale or microreactor scale. We scaled this up to the bench scale. And we've also now have a pilot facility coming online in early 2019 that's going to do this at the barrels per day scale. So really be able to translate this from a research project we're doing at a small scale in the lab to something that it can go to a landfill, and we can at least demonstrate this is occurring on real landfill gas. The Hinkley Center is a very kind of unique organization that many states don't have focus on the waste to energy in this. And that is really great in Florida because we have a kind of a nexus of issues related to the waste, water, and not having a lot of direct natural resources. So being able to utilize this in terms of waste minimization and reuse is something that the Hinkley Center is focused on, which makes them kind of a unique institution among U.S. states. So there's a couple aspects of the relationship between all the entities involved that make this important. One is there's direct sponsored research at USF. So this primarily goes to fund graduate students and undergraduate students. A number of students, maybe up to 10 students, have graduated that have worked primarily on their research projects at undergrad and graduate level on these Hinkley projects. Many of them have gone to work in the state of Florida in the waste industry or industry. So there's kind of translating engineering from these projects into people being trained to take jobs in industry in the state of Florida. In addition to that, we've taken some of these and leveraged some of these Hinkley funds for Department of Energy projects, which are ongoing still. And these may have very practical applications of taking landfill gas and biogas from agricultural waste or landfills and taking that and converting fuel feedstocks or renewable fuels from this that would help mitigate the amount of fossil fuels we need to use in the state of Florida. So the Hinkley Center has been very important to me because the staff there, and they've all been very supportive of research efforts. In doing that, in many cases, we're looking at these as initial projects. So we're trying to get some initial data to go after federal funds. That has been very helpful for us to translate this research into larger projects after that. In terms of the overall kind of research portfolio, I think we've done a lot of very tangible, impactful research that could be done. We've translated, or in the process of translating some of this to practical solutions and everyday problems. So I think looking at not just talking about other people being potentially those that could do this, but we're trying to go after and doing these development steps ourselves as we go from getting things out of the lab. And I think the Hinkley Center has been very helpful for us to do that in many of our projects.